In this video, we're going to explore how to add Firebase to an Android Studio application. I have an existing application here that I've built over time and have put into GitHub. The GitHub link is in the notes for this video. First of all, we'll jump right in just a moment, but just a few terms. Firebase, what is it? It simplifies something that used to be rather laborious when doing Android programming, which is synchronizing data on the device and centrally in the cloud. Before, you'd have to do a lot of manual work to read data from the cloud, persist it locally to a SQL-like database, so on and so forth. Firebase makes that a lot easier. We're going to use the Android Studio development tool to do this. And as I said, we have an existing app we're simply going to add it to. What we're going to do is we're going to fill out some plant information. And then when we hit save, we want to save that to Firebase. So what we need is an Android project. We may need to generate an SHA-1 fingerprint. That is optional in some cases, though. And then we need to create a new Firebase project, and we need to associate the Firebase project with our Android Studio app. We'll also have to do a little modification to the build and bring a small JSON file from the Firebase URL down to the Android Studio project. So let's begin with Firebase. I simply go to Firebase's website, which is firebase.com or firebase.google.com. Now, I am logged in with my Google account, so I can click on Go to Console, and it will take me up to this view here. I choose Create New Project, and we'll give it just a moment here, and we're going to call this Plant Places NW2015. That's similar to the project that I started that we're seeing in the emulator. Create Project. And from here, it's going to bring up a little window where it's going to ask us to add this project to ask us if we want to add this to an existing Android app, which is what we want to do. So first, the package name. Where do we find that? Well, the package name, that's where our classes are organized here, but it's a little tricky because you see several package names. So what we want to do is hold Shift, and then type in Android manifest, because that's the official package name for our project. And that package name is what uniquely identifies our project on the Google Play Store. So this is the package name we want here. It's at the very top of Android Manifest. I take that, plug that in here. App nickname, we'll call it Plant Places 15. And we'll say Add App. Okay, now it gives us very clear details on what to do next. We need to add this Google Services JSON, just like you saw in my presentation. The Google Services JSON downloaded automatically when we got to this screen. It named a little bit differently than it should have here. So I've simply renamed it on the file system. I'm going to right-click and choose Copy. And now I'm going to go to my Android Studio. Now we have to be careful because it says to copy it to the Android app module root directory. But when we look at Android Studio with the Android view here, it's hard to tell what that is because it doesn't look like what we see here in the screen capture. It's a little easier if we go to Project Files, and then we see a directory called App with a Git Ignore, an IML, Build Gradle, ProGuard Rules Pro. That looks a lot more like this here. So I'm going to right click here and I'm going to choose paste, and okay, and we look good, and we've now we'll go ahead and add this to Git. We have now added that to the correct location. So let's continue with the tutorial now, and it says, okay, we have a few things we need to add to the project level build.gradle. We need to add a dependency. So okay, now once again we have to be careful as there are two build.gradles. There's one at the project level and one at the app level. This is the one at the app level, and this is the one at the project level. So let's take a look. And I don't see a dependency section, so we'll go ahead and add the entire section. Okay, build. Oh no, there it is, right there. So let's just go back and add this one line. Control C and Control V. Okay, and save. And now it wants us to make a change also to the app level build.gradle. Add this to the bottom of the file, okay? And we go to the app level build.gradle. Again, much easier if you go to this project files view. So at the very end, boom, apply plugin and save. And finally, choose Sync Now on the bar that appears. So we'll take a look, and I don't see the Sync Now icon, so I'm just going to come over here to Gradle and choose Refresh All Gradle Projects. We'll give that a moment, and then we'll do a rebuild. Now, I did find when I built this, I had the video paused. I did find that my Google Play Services version was way out of date, so I bumped it up to 9.0.0, which is the minimum that we can have to run this COM Google GMS Google Services plugin. Now, one more thing we're going to want to do, and I'll stress this is something that we only want to do when we're just trying to get things up and running quickly, is we need to change the rules on our database. So when you go to Firebase and you select the database, see a tab here called Rules. Now, by default, we need to do some kind of authentication with Firebase, which is definitely a good idea and highly recommended. But to simplify things, and I stress only for a demo, not for production, we can change these entries to true, which simply allows all users. That is as dangerous as it sounds. You are allowing anyone to come in and update this application, this database rather. So I stress only use this when you're testing things out, but for us, no problem. So I went ahead and changed it to true and then published. Nonetheless, the hard part's over, and that is just getting the environment set up. So the next thing that we need to do is add a bit of code. Now I'm going to go ahead and start this application with just a root node called foo. And I'm going to go back to Android Studio. Now, the screen that we're looking at here is kind of the big screen for the application. It's called GPS a Plant. Currently, if you press the Save button, this big button here, it's going to invoke a method called onSaveClicked. Now, at the moment, it is gathering some information from the screen and saving that into a DTO, a data transfer object. In other words, just a plain old Java object. That's a good idea if you're going to save an entire clump of data to the database at one time. Put it in a Java class. Now, currently what I'm doing is I'm saving it to a SQLite database on the application. But let's take that out for the moment and let's replace it with a save to Firebase. So the first thing I need to do is simply say Firebase database, and then we'll call that database equals Firebase database.get instance, just like so. Now, we used to have to specify the database name, but actually we don't need to do that anymore. It is kind enough to get that database name out of that Google Services JSON file that we downloaded earlier, so we don't have to actually put in that database name. It figures it out on its own. Now from database, I'm going to say database.getReference, and what this will do, and let's see, we will Control-Alt-V to assign that to a local variable. We'll call this database reference. This gets us a reference to a certain point within the Firebase database. Finally, what I can do is I can say database reference.child. Now remember how I made that node called foo. Now, just out of curiosity, what does child return? Control-Alt-V again. Notice that returns yet another database reference. So database reference is essentially any point within this database that we have. So we could take it all the way at the top level where we have here, or we can walk ourselves down to a child. Okay, now push. We want to start pushing items onto the child, and I'm going to say set value. And what value am I going to push? Well, I certainly could push a specimen, a string like bar, or I could push an entire object like specimen. If I push an entire object, then each of those values will that compose that object will be placed on our Firebase database. So simple refresh the emulator, and note that I have a couple of breakpoints set here. So as soon as it updates on the emulator, we'll come back and we'll take a look at the database updating. Now with the source code deployed and the app restarted, first I'm going to push a GPS coordinate on because that's part of what we're saving here. So longitude we'll do minus 84.53, latitude minus 39.74, which roughly puts you in good old Cincinnati, although actually I think it's 37.94, but close enough anyway. I push that over, and in a moment we'll see it update over here. Plant name we're going to call Cercis canadensis. Location we'll say Cincinnati Zoo and Botanical Garden. Description, we'll say a good native edible plant. And sure enough, you notice our GPS just updated. It syncs every minute. So there we go. So we've saved some information. I'm going to hit save. The debugger joins in now. In Android Studio, I'm going to choose F8, and we see that we are assembling a DTO with the information from our screen. I did that in a previous video. It's pretty straightforward. It's just plain old Java, but I do have that in a previous video in this playlist if you're interested. So you see specimen DTO, Cincinnati Zoo and Botanical Garden, a good native edible plant. We have our latitude and our longitude coming in. So sure enough, the DTO is building as we would expect. Now we get our reference to our Firebase database. We go all the way to the root. Now we walk down to the foo leaf, and we're going to say, I want to push this value onto that foo leaf. So just another gut check to make sure I'm not doing any magic behind the scenes. You notice that there is nothing here under foo at the moment, but notice just as soon as I choose F8 and then F9 to continue, let's go back and look again. And you see in just a split second, sure enough, the data have updated here on Firebase. A good native edible plant, 39.74, minus 84.54, Cincinnati Zoo and Botanical Garden. A couple other things we didn't fill out, but nonetheless updated very quickly. So that's creating a database in Firebase and adding data to it. In our next video, we'll see how we can get automatic notifications when somebody else updates our database. Lots more to cover here. I hope it's been a good video for you. And certainly take a look. I have quite a few other videos on Android programming that I think you'll find a good benefit as well. Thank you.